My parents threw me out after my brother framed me for stealing $50,000. 15 years later, they unknowingly hired my company to save their family business. People always say, blood is thicker than water. I used to believe that. I used to believe that no matter what happened, your family would always choose you. I was 17 years old when I learned how wrong I was. My name is Ethan Carter. I'm 32 now. I own one of the largest business consulting firms in the country. We've helped billion-dollar companies recover from bankruptcy, saved businesses that everyone thought were already dead, and negotiated deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. People often ask me where I learned to stay calm under pressure. I always give them the same answer. When you've already lost everything once, nothing scares you anymore. Because long before I had money, before the company, before the awards, before the magazine covers, I was just a 17-year-old kid standing in my parents' living room, watching my entire life fall apart. And the worst part? The person destroying it was my own brother. Growing up, everyone thought my family was perfect. Dad owned a successful manufacturing company that had been in our family for almost 40 years. Mom handled the company's finances from home. My older brother, Ryan, was the golden child, captain of the football team, homecoming king, popular, confident, the kind of person who could walk into any room and instantly become the center of attention. Then there was me, quiet, bookish, the kid who preferred reading business books instead of playing football. While Ryan dreamed about becoming CEO one day, I dreamed about building something completely different. People assumed Ryan would inherit Dad's company. Nobody ever questioned it, not even me, because I never wanted it. I wanted to build something that belonged to me, something nobody could say had been handed to me. Ryan and I weren't always enemies. When we were kids, he taught me how to ride a bike. He stood up for me when older kids bullied me. He even let me sleep in his room whenever thunderstorms scared me. Sometimes I still think about those memories because they remind me that people don't always become monsters overnight. Sometimes they become them one small decision at a time. The change started after Ryan turned 16. That's when Dad began taking him to the factory every weekend, teaching him how the business worked, introducing him to employees, calling him the future of this company. At first, I was genuinely happy for him until I noticed something. Every compliment Ryan received seemed to make him look at me a little differently, like he wasn't just my older brother anymore, like he was already my boss. One Saturday afternoon, Dad asked me to help organize old financial records in his office. I spent nearly 6 hours sorting invoices, filing tax documents, and scanning contracts. By the time I finished, it was almost 8 at night. Dad walked in, looked around the office, then smiled. Good work. It was only 2 words, but I can't explain how much they meant to me. Dad rarely praised anyone, especially me. As I packed my backpack, Ryan walked through the office door. Dad immediately turned toward him. There you are. I've been waiting. Ryan looked confused. For what? Dad reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was the company's custom-made executive watch, solid gold, family initials engraved on the back. Dad placed it into Ryan's hands. One day, this company will be yours. I want you to wear this until then. Ryan smiled proudly. I won't let you down. I stood there quietly, holding a stack of dusty folders. Dad looked at me for a second. Oh, good job with the paperwork. Then they walked out together, leaving me alone in the office. That was the moment I realized something. No matter how hard I worked, I'd always be standing in someone else's shadow. The next year, Dad trusted Ryan with more responsibility. He attended board meetings, met suppliers, even started signing small contracts. I wasn't jealous. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. The truth was, I didn't want his position. I just wanted someone to believe I could succeed too. School became my escape. I loved economics, business strategy, marketing, anything related to building companies. While everyone else was playing video games, I spent nights studying entrepreneurs, reading annual reports, watching lectures from business schools. One my economics teacher, Mr. Harrison, stopped me after class. Ethan, I read your market analysis. I smiled nervously. Was it okay? He laughed. Okay, you wrote a better business plan than some MBA students. I honestly thought he was joking. He wasn't. You ever think about starting your own company? I shrugged. My family already has one. He shook his head. No. I asked if you've ever thought about starting your own. Those words stayed with me for weeks. Maybe. I didn't need to inherit success. Maybe I could build it. Around the same time, something strange started happening at home. Dad became paranoid. Every evening, he checked the office safe twice, sometimes 3 times. He started locking important files inside metal cabinets. One night during dinner, Mom finally asked, "Is everything okay?" Dad forced a smile. "Just being careful." Ryan looked up. Something happened. Dad hesitated, then quietly said, "We've been moving money between accounts. Large amounts. I don't want anyone making mistakes." The conversation ended there, but I noticed something. Ryan suddenly became very interested. He started asking questions Dad had never heard him ask before. How much money was in the safe? Who had access? Which keys opened which drawers? At the time, I didn't think much of it. Looking back, those questions should have terrified me. 3 weeks later, everything changed. It was a Tuesday. I came home from school around 4 in the afternoon. The moment I opened the front door, I knew something was wrong. Mom was crying. Dad was pacing across the living room. 2 police officers stood near the hallway. Ryan sat on the couch, staring at the floor. Dad looked at me. His face was pale. "Ethan, come here." My heart immediately started racing. What happened? He didn't answer. Instead, he held up an empty cash envelope. $50,000 is missing. I looked around the room, confused. What? Dad's voice became louder. Someone stole $50,000 from the office safe. I laughed nervously. Okay, so who did it? Nobody answered. Instead, both police officers looked directly at me. And that's when I realized they weren't investigating. They were waiting for me. Ethan still has no idea that, within the next hour, police will find the missing money hidden in his own bedroom, exactly where his brother secretly planted it the night before. For a few seconds, I honestly thought they were joking. I looked at Dad, then at the police officers, then back at Ryan. Nobody moved. Nobody smiled. Nobody said anything. Dad slowly walked toward me. "The money disappeared this morning. Your mother counted it yesterday. It was there. Now it's gone." I frowned. "So, why are you all looking at me?" Dad took a deep breath. Because your brother saw you leave my office last night. I turned toward Ryan, so fast my backpack slipped off my shoulder. What? Ryan looked uncomfortable. I wasn't sure, but I saw you come downstairs around 11. I stared at him. What are you talking about? I was asleep. He shook his head. I saw someone. It looked like you. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Enough. The police are going to search the house. My stomach dropped. Search the house. Why? Because $50,000 doesn't just disappear. One of the officers stepped forward. We'll make this as quick as possible. I looked at Mom. She couldn't even look me in the eyes. That hurt more than anything. The officers searched the living room first, then the kitchen, then Dad's office. Nothing. Ryan stood silently beside the staircase, watching everything. Every few seconds, he glanced toward me. Something about the way he looked felt strange. Not scared, not nervous, almost expectant, like he was waiting for something. I couldn't explain it, but for the first time in my life, my own brother made me uneasy. 20 minutes later, everyone walked upstairs. My bedroom was the last room, the smallest room in the house. A single bed, old wooden desk, bookshelf, closet, nothing special. The older officer opened my closet first. Clothes, shoes, school backpack, nothing. The second officer checked under the bed. Nothing. I let out a small breath. Maybe this ridiculous nightmare would finally end. Then, the first officer picked up my backpack. You use this every day? Yeah. He unzipped it, pulled out my notebooks, laptop charger, calculator. Then his hand stopped. He slowly reached deeper inside. My heart started racing. I had no idea why. Then, he pulled out a thick brown envelope. The exact same envelope Dad had been holding downstairs. The room became silent. Very, very silent. The officer opened it. Bundles of cash, one after another. He counted quickly, then looked toward Dad. It appears we found the missing money. For a second, I couldn't even process what I'd just heard. I stared at the envelope, then at my backpack, then back at the envelope. No, that's impossible. Dad looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, disappointment, deep, painful disappointment. Mom covered her mouth. Ryan took a step backward, as if he couldn't believe it either. But something about his reaction didn't feel real. I didn't do this. Nobody answered. I swear. Still nothing. I've never even seen that envelope before. Dad's voice was almost a whisper. Ethan, stop. I didn't stop. The entire house went silent. It was the first time Dad had ever yelled at me like that. You lied. You stole from your own family. I didn't steal anything. I don't even know how that got there. One of the officers raised his hand. Sir, please, let's remain calm. Dad pointed directly at my backpack. How else would $50,000 end up inside his room? I had no answer, because I wanted to know the exact same thing. The officers questioned me for almost an hour. Where had I been yesterday? Who had I talked to? Had I entered Dad's office? Did I know the safe combination? I answered every question honestly. Yes, I'd been in the office. Dad had asked me to organize invoices. Yes, I'd seen the safe. No, I didn't know the combination. No, I hadn't taken anything. Every answer sounded weaker than the last, because the evidence was sitting right there, inside my backpack. Eventually, the officers stepped outside to discuss everything. Since I was a minor, they couldn't simply arrest me without additional procedures. That gave Dad enough time to make his decision. When the officers returned, Dad looked at them. I don't want to press criminal charges. Mom immediately looked up. David, he continued. He's still my son. The officers nodded. If that's your decision. One of them turned toward me. You got lucky. If this had gone differently, your future could have ended today. They left. The front door closed. Silence filled the house. I thought maybe now, someone would finally listen. I was wrong. Dad slowly picked up the envelope, then looked at me. I've spent 17 years teaching you honesty. This, he held up the money, is how you repay me. I didn't do it. Ryan finally spoke. Dad, maybe someone. Dad cut him off. No, the money was in Ethan's bag. There's nothing else to discuss. I turned toward Ryan. Tell him. He looked confused. Tell him what? You know I wouldn't steal. He looked away. I don't know. Those 4 words destroyed me. Mom finally spoke. Her voice was barely audible. Ethan, if you just admit it, we can move forward. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom, you think I did this too? She started crying again. I don't know what to think. That answer hurt more than an accusation, because it meant she'd already stopped believing in me. Dad walked upstairs. A minute later, he came back carrying an old duffel bag. He threw it onto the floor in front of me. Pack your things. I frowned. What? You heard me. Dad, you can't be serious. I won't have a thief living under my roof. The room started spinning. Dad, I have nowhere to go. You should have thought about that before stealing. I didn't steal anything. He didn't even react. His mind was already made up. I slowly looked around the room. Mom, crying. Ryan, silent. Dad, staring at me like I was a stranger. 17 years. Gone. In less than 2 hours. I walked upstairs, packed a few clothes, my laptop, 3 programming books, and the notebook where I'd written every business idea I'd ever had. That notebook would change my life one day. I just didn't know it yet. When I came back downstairs, Dad opened the front door. Rain was pouring outside. Thunder echoed across the street. I stood there holding one duffel bag, looking at the only home I'd ever known. I waited, just for one person, anyone, to stop me. Mom never spoke. Ryan never moved. Dad simply pointed toward the door. I walked outside. The cold rain soaked through my clothes within seconds. As I reached the sidewalk, I turned around one last time. The porch light illuminated my family standing inside. I looked directly at Ryan. For just 1 second, our eyes met, and that's when I saw it. The smallest smile, barely noticeable, gone almost instantly, but I saw it. A smile, not relief, satisfaction. My stomach dropped. In that moment, I didn't have proof. I didn't have evidence, but deep inside, I knew my brother had done this. He had framed me, and somehow, everyone else had believed him instead. I picked up my bag, turned around, and walked into the storm, completely alone. At 2:17 a.m., cold, hungry, and with nowhere left to go, Ethan sits on a park bench and opens his laptop for the last time, only to find an email that will completely change the direction of his life. The rain didn't stop. Neither did I. I walked for almost 3 hours. No destination. No plan. Just away. Away from the house. Away from the people who had stopped believing me. By the time I reached downtown, it was almost 2 in the morning. Every store was closed. The streets were nearly empty. Streetlights reflected off the wet pavement. I finally sat down on an old bench outside a small bus station. My clothes were soaked. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not because of the cold, because everything I'd ever called home was gone. I placed my duffel bag beside me, opened it. 3 shirts, 1 pair of jeans, a laptop, 3 business books, and a notebook full of dreams that suddenly felt worthless. I stared at it for a long time, then quietly asked myself, now what? My stomach growled. I checked my wallet. $23. That was everything I owned. $23. No house, no family, no job, no future. I laughed. A broken, hopeless laugh. Funny how life changes. 24 hours earlier, I was worried about my economics homework. Now, I was calculating how many meals $23 could buy. The battery icon on my laptop flashed red. 6%. I almost didn't open it. Then I remembered. I'd applied for a summer internship 2 weeks earlier. I connected to the free Wi-Fi from the bus station. Opened my email. 1 unread message. Subject: Harrison Technology Solutions Internship Program. I held my breath. Opened it. Dear Ethan Carter, after reviewing your application, we are pleased to invite you for the final interview tomorrow at 9 a.m. I stared at the screen. Tomorrow, 9 in the morning, across the city. I looked at my soaked clothes, my empty wallet, then back at the email. Maybe, just maybe, life wasn't completely finished with me. At 7:30, I found a public restroom inside the station. I washed my face, tried to flatten my hair, cleaned my shoes with paper towels. It didn't help much, but it was all I had. I looked at myself in the mirror. I barely recognized the person staring back. Dark circles, red eyes, 17 years old, looking 40. I whispered, just survived today. The interview office occupied the 15th floor of a modern glass building. Everything looked expensive, clean, professional, exactly the opposite of how I felt. The receptionist smiled. Name: Ethan Carter. She checked her screen. Mr. Harrison will see you shortly. I sat down. 3 other candidates waited nearby. Perfect suits, leather briefcases, confident smiles. I looked down at my wrinkled shirt. I already felt defeated. Mr. Carter, a tall man with gray hair, stood near the hallway. I'm Daniel Harrison. I followed him into his office. He closed the door. Didn't ask about my clothes. Didn't ask why I looked exhausted. Instead, he placed my school business competition file on the desk. That I've been reading your proposal. I smiled nervously. You actually read it? 3 times. He leaned back. Who wrote this? I did. Alone? Yes. He looked impressed. This cost reduction model. Where did you learn it? I shrugged. I read company annual reports online. He laughed. Most adults don't read annual reports. I know. For the next 40 minutes, he didn't ask normal interview questions. Instead, he gave me business problems. A company losing customers. A factory with rising costs. A supplier demanding higher prices. Every scenario became harder. Every answer I gave made him smile a little more. Finally, he closed his notebook. Ethan, I've interviewed over 200 students. You think differently. I smiled for the first time in almost 24 hours. Thank you. Then, he noticed something. Ethan, what happened to your hands? I looked down. They were scratched from carrying my bag through the rain. He frowned. You look like you haven't slept. I hesitated, then quietly answered, I haven't. He didn't ask another question. Not immediately. Instead, he walked toward the office window, looked outside, then asked softly, do you have somewhere to go after this interview? The question caught me off guard. I stayed silent. That silence told him everything. He slowly turned around. You don't. I looked away. No. What happened? I swallowed. My family kicked me out. He didn't interrupt. Didn't pity me. He simply listened. For the next 15 minutes, I told him everything. The missing money, the police, my backpack, the accusations, the rain, the park bench. When I finished, the office became completely silent. Daniel Harrison sat there, thinking. Finally, he opened a drawer, pulled out a business card, slid it across the desk. This isn't an internship anymore. I frowned. What do you mean? I think you need a job. My heart stopped. You'd hire me? I'll give you a chance. But understand something. He looked directly into my eyes. I don't hire people because I feel sorry for them. I hire people who solve problems. If you're lying, you'll be fired. If you're telling the truth, this will be the first day of your new life. I reached for the card. My hands were trembling. Thank you. He smiled. Don't thank me. Earn it. That afternoon, for the first time since leaving home, I had a job, a tiny desk, an old computer, minimum wage. To anyone else, it would have looked insignificant. To me, it looked like hope. As I organized my new workspace, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I answered. Hello. Silence. Then, I heard breathing. A familiar breathing. Ryan. The line stayed quiet for almost 10 seconds. Then, he whispered only 4 words. You deserved what happened. Click. The call ended. I stared at the phone, frozen. Until that moment, I'd only suspected. Now, I knew. My brother wasn't sorry. He wasn't guilty. He wasn't scared. He wanted me to suffer. And I had absolutely no idea why. That same night, back at his parents' house, Ryan quietly walks into Dad's office, opens the company's safe again, and steals another $100,000. This time, there's no Ethan left to blame. The next morning, the entire Carter manufacturing office was in chaos. Employees whispered in every hallway. Managers rushed between departments. Phones rang nonstop. Nobody understood what had happened. Only one thing was certain. Another $100,000 had disappeared. Dad stood inside his office, staring at the empty safe. His face had completely lost its color. This isn't possible, he whispered. I changed the combination. The police arrived less than 30 minutes later. This time, the investigation looked very different. Because Ethan wasn't there anymore. The officers questioned every employee, checked every security log, reviewed every entry into the building. Hours passed. Nothing. No fingerprints. No witnesses. No suspects. Dad slammed his fist onto the desk. Find whoever did this. One detective calmly replied, we're trying. But whoever did this planned it carefully. Ryan stood quietly near the window, watching everyone panic. Every few minutes, he pretended to be making phone calls, pretended to be worried, pretended to comfort Mom. Nobody noticed his hands weren't shaking anymore, because unlike everyone else, he already knew where the money had gone. Meanwhile, my first week at Harrison Technology had officially begun. I expected people to treat me like the new kid. Instead, everyone treated me like I belonged there. Mr. Harrison gave me small projects at first, organizing client reports, researching competitors, building simple financial models. Nothing complicated, but I loved every second of it. Every problem felt like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Every evening, after everyone went home, I stayed another 2 hours, reading old client files, studying business strategies, learning everything I possibly could. One night, Mr. Harrison walked past my desk. He looked at the clock, 9:48. Nobody understood what had happened. Only one thing was certain. Another $100,000 had disappeared. Dad stood inside his office, staring at the empty safe. His face had completely lost its color. "This isn't possible," he whispered. I changed the combination. The police arrived less than 30 minutes later. This time, the investigation looked very different. Because Ethan wasn't there anymore, the officers questioned every employee, checked every security log, reviewed every entry into the building. Hours passed. Nothing. No fingerprints. No witnesses. No suspects. Dad slammed his fist onto the desk. "Find whoever did this." One detective calmly replied, "We're trying." But whoever did this planned it carefully. Ryan stood quietly near the window, watching everyone panic. Every few minutes, he pretended to be making phone calls, pretended to be worried, pretended to comfort Mom. Nobody noticed. His hands weren't shaking anymore, because unlike everyone else, he already knew where the money had gone. Meanwhile, my first week at Harrison Technology had officially begun. I expected people to treat me like the new kid. Instead, everyone treated me like I belonged there. Mr. Harrison gave me small projects at first, organizing client reports, researching competitors, building simple financial models. Nothing complicated, but I loved every second of it. Every problem felt like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Every evening, after everyone went home, I stayed another 2 hours, reading old client files, studying business strategies, learning everything I possibly could. One night, Mr. Harrison walked past my desk. He looked at the clock, 9:48. "You know everyone else left 2 hours ago." I smiled. "I know. You trying to impress me?" I shook my head. "No, I'm trying to impress myself." For the first time, I saw him genuinely smile. Good answer. 3 months passed. Life slowly became normal. Well, as normal as it could be. I rented the smallest apartment I could find. 1 bedroom, old furniture, a leaking kitchen sink. The heater barely worked. But every night, when I locked the front door, I felt something I'd never felt before. Peace. Nobody yelling. Nobody comparing me to Ryan. Nobody telling me I wasn't enough. The apartment was tiny, but somehow, it felt bigger than my childhood home. One Friday afternoon, Mr. Harrison called me into his office. He placed a thick folder on the desk. "Our biggest client." I looked down. Bennett Logistics, one of the largest shipping companies in the state. They've been losing money for almost 2 years. Their consultants have failed. Our senior analysts have failed. He pushed the folder toward me. "I want your opinion." I looked surprised. "Mine. You see problems differently." I spent the entire weekend studying the file. Hundreds of pages, financial reports, payroll records, shipping schedules, supplier contracts. By Sunday night, I found something nobody else had noticed. The company wasn't losing money because of sales. It was losing money because trucks were returning empty after deliveries. Millions of dollars every year wasted on empty return trips. I built a completely new routing model, calculated every possible saving, double-checked every number, then printed everything. Monday morning, I placed the report on Mr. Harrison's desk. He read quietly for almost 20 minutes, didn't say a single word. Finally, he looked up. "Did you really do this yourself?" "Yes." He leaned back. "My senior consultants missed this." "I know." He laughed. "You don't lack confidence." I smiled. "I checked the numbers 6 times. If I'm wrong, fire me." He laughed even harder, then stood up. "Come with me." An hour later, I found myself sitting inside Bennett Logistics boardroom. 7 executives, 1 CEO, everyone twice my age. The CEO looked confused. "This is your consultant." Mr. Harrison nodded. "No, this is the man who solved your problem." Every eye turned toward me. I took a deep breath, connected my laptop, and began speaking. For the next 45 minutes, I explained every mistake, every hidden cost, every unnecessary expense, every opportunity they had missed. Nobody interrupted. When I finished, the room stayed silent. The CEO slowly closed the report, then smiled. "In 20 years, nobody has explained our business this clearly." He stood up, walked across the room, and shook my hand. "Young man, you just saved this company." That single meeting changed everything. Within weeks, news spread throughout the consulting industry. Clients started asking for me by name, not because I was famous, because results speak louder than age. Back at Carter Manufacturing, things continued getting worse. The missing $100,000 was never found. Banks started asking questions. Insurance investigators became involved. The board demanded answers. Dad became more stressed every week. Mom barely slept. Ryan kept pretending to help. One evening, Dad walked into Ryan's office. "I don't understand." Ryan looked up. "What?" "I trusted everyone. I trusted this company. I trusted." He stopped talking, then quietly said, "I even blamed the wrong son." Ryan's face froze for just a second. Only a second. Then he forced another sad smile. "We'll get through this." Dad nodded slowly. "I hope you're right." As Dad walked away, Ryan locked his office door, opened the bottom drawer of his desk, reached underneath a stack of files, and pulled out 2 thick brown envelopes. One labeled $50,000, the other $100,000. He stared at them for several seconds, then quietly smiled. "You were always smarter than everyone, Ethan," he whispered, "but not smart enough." A second later, his office phone rang. He answered casually. "Ryan Carter speaking." The voice on the other end said only one sentence. "We know you took the money." Ryan's smile disappeared instantly. Ryan's heart stopped. For the first time in months, he looked genuinely afraid. He tightened his grip around the phone. "Who is this?" The voice on the other end remained calm. "You know exactly who this is." Ryan frowned. "No, I don't." A short laugh came through the speaker. "You're lying. You lied to your father. You lied to the police. And now, you're lying to me." Ryan quickly stood up from his chair, locked the office door again, walked toward the window. Listen, I don't know what you're talking about. The caller interrupted him. You stole $50,000. A pause. Then, you stole another $100,000. Ryan's breathing became heavier. The voice continued. And if you don't want your father to know the truth, you'll do exactly what I tell you. Click. The call ended. Ryan immediately called the number back. The number you were trying to reach is unavailable. Again, unavailable. Again, unavailable. He threw the phone across the office. For the first time, his perfect plan wasn't perfect anymore. Someone knew. The only question was, who? Over the next several days, Ryan became obsessed. He checked security cameras himself, reviewed employee records, questioned staff members, even searched the parking lot cameras. Nothing. No clues. No suspects. No answers. It was like the caller had appeared from nowhere. But every morning, another envelope arrived. No return address. No fingerprints. Just one typed sentence. I know what you did. Ryan burned every letter, but they kept coming. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Always the same message. I know what you did. He stopped sleeping, started drinking coffee all night. His confidence slowly disappeared. Meanwhile, my life continued moving forward. Mr. Harrison trusted me with bigger clients, bigger meetings, bigger decisions. Every successful project brought another recommendation. Another recommendation brought another client. Another client brought another opportunity. Exactly 1 year after joining the company, Mr. Harrison called everyone into the conference room. 30 employees sat quietly. Nobody knew why. He stood at the front, holding a small envelope. I've made a decision. Everyone looked toward him. This company has never promoted someone this quickly. He smiled, but rules are made to be broken. He looked directly at me. Ethan, congratulations. You are officially our youngest business strategy manager. The room exploded into applause. I couldn't believe it. Just 1 year earlier, I'd been sleeping on a bus station bench. Now, I had my own office, a management position, and people who actually believed in me. As everyone congratulated me, Mr. Harrison quietly leaned closer. This is only the beginning. I smiled. I hope so. He shook his head. No, I don't hope. I know. That evening, I returned to my apartment carrying a small cake the office had given me. It wasn't expensive, just chocolate with the words, "Congratulations, Ethan." I placed it on the kitchen table, lit one candle, sat there alone. For a moment, I imagined what life would have been like if my parents had believed me. Would they be celebrating with me? Would Dad finally be proud? Would Mom be smiling? Then I blew out the candle. Some questions aren't worth asking anymore. Just as I picked up my fork, someone knocked on my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I slowly walked over, looked through the peephole. Nobody. I opened the door carefully. The hallway was empty, but on the floor sat a small brown package. No name, no return address, only 3 words written across the front. For Ethan Carter. My heart started beating faster. I carried it inside, locked the door, opened the package. Inside was a USB flash drive and one handwritten note. The handwriting looked strangely familiar. It said, "If you want to know who destroyed your life, watch the video." I looked at the flash drive in my hand. Without realizing it, my hands had started shaking. Because deep down, I already knew whatever was on that drive was going to change everything. I stared at the USB drive for almost a full minute. My apartment was completely silent. The only sound came from the old refrigerator humming in the corner. I looked at the handwritten note again. "If you want to know who destroyed your life, watch the video." I had replayed that sentence in my head at least 20 times. Who sent it? How did they know where I lived? And more importantly, what could possibly be on that drive? I walked over to my laptop, inserted the USB. One single file appeared. No title, no date, just play. I clicked it. The screen stayed black for several seconds. Then, security camera footage appeared. A date flashed across the bottom. October 14th, the night before the money disappeared. My heart started racing. The camera showed Dad's office hallway. 11:42 p.m. The hallway was empty. 11:46, still empty. 11:51, a figure wearing a black hoodie walked toward Dad's office. The person's face couldn't be seen. Gloves, cap, everything covered. The figure unlocked the office door, walked inside. 5 minutes later, they came back out carrying something under their jacket. Then the video ended. I frowned. This proves nothing. Whoever sent this had only shown part of the recording. Before I could think any further, another file automatically opened. This one came from a different camera. The garage. 11:58 p.m. The same hooded figure walked toward Ryan's car, opened the trunk, placed something inside, then removed the hood. The moment the person's face appeared, my entire body froze. Ryan, my own brother. I couldn't breathe. I replayed the clip. Again. There was no mistake. No blurry image. No confusion. It was him. He looked directly into the camera for almost 2 full seconds, then drove away. I sat there, unable to move. For 15 years, I'd imagined this moment. I'd imagined finally proving I was innocent. But now that the proof actually existed, I didn't know what to feel. Relief? Anger? Hatred? None of them. I just felt empty. Suddenly, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered immediately. "Who are you?" A deep voice answered calmly. "Now you know the truth." "Who are you?" "Someone who owed your grandfather a favor." "My grandfather?" The voice continued. "Don't waste time trying to find me. You won't. I've been waiting 15 years for this." My heart skipped. 15 years. Why didn't you send this before? Silence. Then, because 15 years ago, nobody would have believed you. I closed my eyes. He was right. Back then, everyone believed Ryan. Now, everything was different. The caller spoke again. "Your brother didn't stop with 50,000. He stole much more." "What do you mean?" "He has been stealing from your father's company for years." I stood up so quickly my chair fell backward. "That's impossible." "No, it's documented. Follow the money." Before I could ask another question, the call ended. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I opened every financial report I could legally access. Everything Carter Manufacturing had published publicly. Annual reports, tax summaries, bank filings. Something immediately caught my attention. The company's profits had been falling every single year. Not because sales were dropping. Sales were actually increasing. Yet, cash reserves kept disappearing. It didn't make sense, unless someone inside the company was quietly draining it. The next morning, Mr. Harrison noticed I looked exhausted. "You didn't sleep." I shook my head. "No." He closed my my office door. What's going on? For the first time, I told him everything. Not just about being framed. About the USB, the video, the anonymous caller, everything. When I finished, he remained silent for almost a minute. Finally, he spoke. Ethan, I need you to promise me something. What? You are not going after your brother. I frowned. He ruined my life. I know, but revenge makes smart people stupid. He leaned forward. If you confront him now, he'll destroy evidence. If you expose him without proof, your family will defend him again. He paused. You don't need accusations. You need facts. And facts take patience. I slowly nodded. He was right. Again, 3 months passed. I buried myself in work. Client after client. Meeting after meeting. Promotion after promotion. On the outside, my life had never looked better. On the inside, I couldn't stop thinking about that video. Then, one rainy Tuesday morning, Mr. Harrison walked into my office carrying a newspaper. He placed it on my desk. Right on the front page was my father's photograph. The headline read, Carter Manufacturing faces possible bankruptcy after losing major contract. I grabbed the paper. Read every word. The company had lost its biggest customer. Banks had frozen new credit. Investors were demanding answers. For the first time in nearly 40 years, Carter Manufacturing was on the edge of collapse. Mr. Harrison quietly said, I think your father is running out of time. Before I could answer, Emily from reception knocked on the door. Ethan, there's someone here asking for you. Who? She hesitated. He says, he's your brother. I looked toward the office window. Down in the lobby, Ryan stood alone, older, tired, wearing the same expensive confidence he used to have. Except now, it looked like it was falling apart. For the first time in 15 years, my brother had come looking for me. For 15 years, I'd imagined this moment. I'd imagined Ryan apologizing, begging, trying to explain himself. Instead, he walked into the lobby like he still owned every room he entered. Only this time, the confidence looked forced. His suit was expensive, but wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. He hadn't slept much. Neither had I. Emily looked at me. Should I send him away? I stared through the glass wall. No, send him up. A minute later, my office door opened. Ryan stepped inside. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. He looked around my office. Floor-to-ceiling windows, client awards, framed magazine covers, my name engraved on the desk. His eyes stopped there. Ethan, you've done well. I smiled faintly. I've been told that. He nodded. I wasn't sure you'd agree to see me. I wasn't sure either. Another silence. Finally, he sat down. I need your help. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I was wrong. The first words out of his mouth were, I need your help. I almost laughed. That's interesting. He frowned. Why? Because the last time we spoke, you told me I deserved everything that happened. His face immediately changed. I know. I was angry. No, I corrected him. You were honest. He looked down at the floor. For the first time in my life, Ryan couldn't look me in the eyes. I'll get straight to the point. He slid a folder across my desk. Carter Manufacturing is collapsing. I know. You've seen the news? I have. He took a deep breath. The banks won't extend our loans. Suppliers are demanding payment. Our biggest customer left. He paused. We have maybe 3 months. I opened the folder. The numbers were worse than I expected. Millions in overdue payments. Declining cash flow. Emergency loans. Everything pointed toward one outcome. Bankruptcy. I closed the folder. You didn't come here for business advice. He nodded slowly. No, I came because everyone says you're the best consultant in the country. I looked at him. Funny, 15 years ago, I wasn't smart enough to defend myself. Now, I was apparently smart enough to save the company. Life has a strange sense of humor. Why me? He looked confused. I just told you. I shook my head. No, I mean, why didn't Dad come? Ryan stayed quiet, then finally answered. He doesn't know I'm here. That surprised me. He'd never ask you. Ryan admitted quietly. He's too proud. I leaned back. So you're asking behind his back. I'm trying to save what's left. I studied him carefully. Something felt different. The old Ryan would have blamed employees, the economy, the banks. Instead, he blamed nobody. Not even once. Almost as if he already knew exactly who was responsible. I have one question. He nodded. Anything. I leaned forward. Did you steal the money? The room instantly became silent. Ryan's face turned pale. He looked away, then toward the window, then back at me. Almost 30 seconds passed. Finally, he whispered, no. One word. One lie. Exactly the same lie he'd been living with for 15 years. I reached into my desk drawer, pulled out the USB drive, and quietly placed it on the desk between us. His eyes immediately locked onto it. You know what this is? He didn't answer. It contains security footage. His breathing changed. You remember security cameras, don't you? Ryan's hands slowly began shaking. Ethan, listen. I interrupted him. I asked you a question. Did you steal the money? Silence. Long, painful silence. Then, for the first time in 15 years, my older brother broke. His shoulders dropped. His eyes filled with tears, and barely above a whisper, he said the words I'd waited half my life to hear. Yes. The room felt completely still. I took the 50,000. I planted it in your backpack. I called the police after Dad found it. Every word hit harder than the last. He continued crying. I thought Dad would forgive you after a few weeks. I never imagined he'd throw you out. I lost control. Then I stole again. And again. And after a while, I couldn't stop. I stared at him, unable to speak. 15 years. Destroyed because of jealousy. Not money. Not inheritance. Jealousy. I hated you. Ryan admitted. Every teacher talked about you. Dad praised your ideas. Even when he didn't realize it. I was terrified. That one day he'd choose you instead of me. I almost laughed. The funny part, I never wanted the company. Ryan closed his eyes. I know. I figured that out too late. He buried his face in his hands. I'm sorry. I know those words aren't enough. They never will be. I don't want Dad to die believing you were a thief. The office became completely silent. Outside, employees continued working. Cars moved through the streets below. The world kept turning. Inside my office, two brothers sat across from each other. One had lost 15 years. The other had spent 15 years running from the truth. Then Ryan reached into his briefcase, pulled out a thick envelope, and placed it in front of me. There's something else. I frowned. What is it? He looked directly into my eyes. It wasn't just me. My heart skipped. What do you mean? The night I stole the first 50,000, I wasn't alone. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. I stared at Ryan. It wasn't just me. He slowly shook his head. No, there was someone else. I frowned. Who? Ryan swallowed. I can't tell you. The room instantly became cold. I leaned back. You came here to confess. You admitted framing me. You admitted stealing. And now, you're protecting someone? Ryan rubbed his face. You don't understand. Then help me understand. He looked toward the office window. If I tell you, it won't just destroy me. It'll destroy everyone. I almost laughed. My life was already destroyed. What else is left? Ryan remained silent. Finally, he reached into the envelope, pulled out several photocopies, old bank transfers, invoices, wire receipts. He spread them across my desk. I started stealing because someone convinced me. I looked at the documents. Every transfer had one thing in common. The money wasn't going into Ryan's account. It was going somewhere else. A company. I narrowed my eyes. Blackstone Holdings. I've never heard of them. Ryan nodded. Nobody has. It doesn't officially exist anymore. What is it? He answered quietly. A shell company. Who owned it? Ryan closed his eyes. I don't know. I looked back at the paperwork. Millions of dollars. Not thousands. Millions. Slowly disappearing over the years. Hidden through fake invoices. Consulting fees. Equipment purchases. Everything looked legitimate. Unless you knew what you were looking for. When did this start? Ryan answered immediately. Before I stole the first 50,000. I looked up. What? I wasn't the first person stealing from Dad. Those words hit me harder than his confession. What are you saying? Ryan looked completely defeated. The company was already bleeding money. I just made it worse. I stood up, walked toward the window, trying to make sense of everything. For 15 years, I believed Ryan destroyed our family. Now I was learning. Someone else had started the fire long before he ever touched the money. Ryan spoke again. The first time I found out, I tried telling someone. I turned around. Who? Dad. And he told me I didn't understand accounting. Ryan laughed bitterly. He trusted the wrong people. I watched him carefully. Something wasn't adding up. If you knew someone else was stealing, why frame me? He didn't answer immediately. Then, very quietly, because I was weak. I thought if Dad focused on you, nobody would notice what I'd done. I kept thinking I'd put the money back. But every lie created another lie. And eventually, I couldn't escape any of them. I returned to my desk, picked up one of the invoices. The signature looked familiar. Not the name. The handwriting. I'd seen it somewhere before. Recently. Very recently. Then it hit me. I opened one of Carter Manufacturing's latest annual reports. Compared the signatures. My heartbeat accelerated. Same handwriting. Same initials. My phone suddenly rang. Emily. I answered. What happened? Her voice sounded nervous. Ethan, you need to come downstairs. Why? Two detectives are here. My heart skipped. What do they want? They said. They've reopened the Carter Manufacturing theft investigation. I looked at Ryan. His face had turned completely white. Emily continued speaking. And they're asking for you by name. I slowly hung up the phone. Neither of us spoke. Because somehow, after 15 years, the past had finally come looking for both of us. Ryan didn't move. Neither did I. The office suddenly felt much smaller. Two detectives. After 15 years. This wasn't a coincidence. I looked at Ryan. Stay here. He immediately stood. No. If they see me here, they'll ask questions. I nodded. They're going to ask questions anyway. Before either of us could say another word, Emily knocked. They're coming up. Ryan's face went pale. I whispered. Go through the private conference room. He disappeared through the second door just seconds before two detectives entered my office. One of them looked around. Mr. Ethan Carter? Yes. He extended his hand. Detective Mark Sullivan. The other detective nodded politely. Detective Lisa Monroe. I shook their hands. What can I do for you? Detective Sullivan placed a thick folder on my desk. We're reopening the theft investigation involving Carter Manufacturing. I heard. He opened the folder. Inside was a copy of the original police report. My name was still printed across the front page. Suspect. Even after 15 years, seeing that word made my stomach turn. The detective noticed. I know. It isn't easy. I looked at him. Why reopen it now? He exchanged a glance with his partner. Because someone anonymously delivered new evidence. My heartbeat accelerated. The USB. His eyebrows lifted. So you received one too. I froze. Two. He nodded. This morning, we received surveillance footage that was never included in the original investigation. He pulled out several photographs. The same hallway. The same garage. The same hooded figure. Ryan. There was no denying it anymore. The detective continued. The footage was professionally restored. The original recording had been partially deleted, but someone managed to recover it. I slowly sat down. So, you know I didn't steal it. Detective Sullivan looked directly into my eyes. I believed that 5 minutes after watching the footage. For 15 years, those were the words I wanted to hear. Yet somehow, they didn't erase anything. They couldn't give me back my childhood. They couldn't erase the nights I slept hungry. They couldn't erase the years I spent believing my own family hated me. The detective closed the folder. "We'd like you to officially clear your name." I smiled sadly. I've been waiting 15 years. At that exact moment, my office door suddenly opened. Ryan walked back inside. He stopped the instant he saw the detectives. Nobody spoke. Detective Monroe slowly looked at him, then back at the surveillance photos. Her expression changed immediately. "Ryan Carter." Ryan quietly nodded. "Yes." The detective stepped closer. "We need to ask you a few questions." Ryan didn't argue. He simply looked at me, then quietly said, "I'm done running." He turned back toward the detectives. "I'll tell you everything." The room became silent. Detective Sullivan switched on a small recorder. "State your full name." "Ryan David Carter." "Do you admit stealing $50,000 from Carter Manufacturing 15 years ago?" Ryan closed his eyes. "Yes." "Did you plant the money in Ethan Carter's backpack?" "Yes." "Did you knowingly allow your younger brother to be blamed?" Ryan's voice broke. "Yes." Every answer felt heavier than the one before. The detectives kept recording. When did the theft stop? Ryan looked down. They never did. Both detectives looked at each other. "What do you mean?" Ryan took a slow breath. "I stole the first 50,000. I stole another 100,000. But after that, someone else took over." The detectives frowned. "Who?" Ryan slowly raised his head. "I don't know his real name, but everyone inside the company called him Mr. Cole." The room fell silent. Detective Monroe immediately opened another file. "There is no executive named Cole at Carter Manufacturing." Ryan nodded. "I know, because that wasn't his real name. He was never officially employed. He met people after hours, used temporary offices, never signed his own documents. He controlled everything without appearing anywhere." I looked at Ryan. "Why didn't you tell Dad?" Ryan laughed bitterly. "I tried. He thought I was making excuses." The detective leaned forward. "Can you identify him if shown photographs?" Ryan answered without hesitation. "Yes." Detective Sullivan pulled out a tablet, opened a folder containing dozens of faces. Current executives, former employees, consultants, auditors. Ryan looked through every photograph carefully. 1 minute passed, then another. Finally, his finger stopped. His entire body froze. "No," he whispered. "It can't be." The detectives immediately leaned forward. "You recognize someone?" Ryan slowly nodded. "I thought his beard looked familiar. I just never realized." He turned the tablet toward me. The moment I saw the photograph, my blood ran cold. Because staring back at me was someone I had trusted completely. Daniel Harrison. The man who gave me my first job. The man who rebuilt my life. The man I had called my mentor for 15 years. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. I couldn't take my eyes off the photograph. Daniel Harrison. The man who gave me my first chance. The man who taught me everything I knew about business. The man who believed in me when my own family didn't. "No," I whispered. "That's impossible." Ryan looked equally confused. "I'm telling you, that's the face I remember." Detective Sullivan carefully picked up the tablet. "Mr. Carter, are you absolutely certain?" Ryan hesitated. For the first time since entering my office, he looked unsure. I'm not 100% sure. It was 15 years ago. He had a beard, different hair, but the eyes, I'll never forget his eyes." My heart sank. That wasn't enough. Not even close. The detectives closed the folder. "We're not arresting anyone based on one memory." Detective Monroe looked at me. "We'll verify everything." Then both detectives left. The office door closed. Ryan looked at me. "I swear, I thought it was him." I stared out the window. "I hope you're wrong. Because if Ryan was right, then my entire life had been built on another lie." That evening, I drove home without turning on the radio, without answering my phone, without thinking about work. The only question repeating in my head was, who is Daniel Harrison, really? I unlocked my apartment, walked inside, and noticed something strange. The lights were already on. My heart immediately started racing. I never left lights on. Slowly, I stepped into the living room. Nobody. Kitchen. Empty. Bedroom. Empty. Then, I noticed an envelope sitting on my dining table. No stamp. No address. Someone had entered my apartment. Again, I opened it carefully. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Daniel Harrison, standing beside my father. The photo looked old. Very old. Maybe 20 years. Both of them were smiling, like close friends. I turned the photograph over. Written on the back, in black ink, were 6 words. "Ask your father about 1998. Nothing else. No signature. No explanation. Just 1998. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. Daniel was already there, reading financial reports. Exactly like every morning. He smiled. "Morning, Ethan." I smiled back, trying not to show anything. "Morning." For the first time in 15 years, I studied him carefully. Every movement, every expression, every word. Was he hiding something? Or was I simply becoming paranoid? He noticed me watching. "You okay?" I nodded. "Didn't sleep much." He laughed. "Neither did I." He handed me a client file. I need you to handle today's board meeting. Normally, I'd be excited. Today, I barely heard him. As he walked away, I noticed something. A small scar behind his right ear. Ryan had mentioned the man from 15 years ago had a scar. My heartbeat sped up. Coincidence? Or proof? I couldn't tell. That afternoon, I drove to my parents' house. For the first time in years, I wasn't there for Ryan or my mother. I wanted answers from Dad. He opened the door slowly. The moment he saw me, his eyes filled with emotion. "Ethan, I wasn't expecting you." "I know." He stepped aside. "Come in." The house looked different. Older, quieter, almost lonely. Dad led me into his office. The same office where everything had started. I placed the old photograph on his desk. His expression changed instantly. He picked it up with trembling hands. "Where did you get this?" "I found it this morning." He kept staring at it, like he'd seen a ghost. "Dad, who's Daniel Harrison?" He looked at me, then back at the photograph. Finally, he whispered, "I haven't heard that name in almost 20 years. I frowned. "What do you mean?" Dad slowly sat down, took off his glasses, and said something I never expected to hear. "Daniel Harrison isn't his real name." My heart stopped. "He used to work here. He wasn't my mentor. He was," Dad's voice cracked, "my business partner." My mind went completely blank. "Business partner?" Dad slowly nodded. He placed the photograph on the desk, then leaned back in his chair. "I met Daniel 24 years ago. We were both trying to grow small manufacturing companies. He was brilliant, smarter than almost anyone I'd ever met. He understood numbers, negotiations, investments. I trusted him." Dad stared out the office window. "And that was my biggest mistake." "What happened?" Dad took a deep breath. "We became partners. For almost 3 years, everything was perfect. Our profits doubled. We opened 2 new factories. We hired hundreds of employees." He smiled sadly. "I thought I'd found a brother." Then his smile disappeared, until I discovered he'd been stealing from the company. I froze. "What?" Dad nodded slowly. "Small amounts. Nothing obvious. But over 3 years, he stole almost $4 million. My heart skipped. $4 million. He created fake consulting companies, fake invoices, fake suppliers. The exact same fraud we started finding years later. Everything suddenly connected. The fake invoices, the shell companies, the disappearing cash. It had all started long before Ryan. "So what happened to Daniel?" Dad answered quietly. "I confronted him. He denied everything. We went to court. I won. But before the police could arrest him, he disappeared. Gone. No goodbye. No trial. No prison. He simply vanished." I frowned. "Then why is he here?" Dad looked confused. "What do you mean?" "He's been my boss for 15 years. Dad's face instantly turned pale. "No, that's impossible." I pulled out my phone, opened Harrison Technologies' website, showed him Daniel's photograph. Dad stared at the screen. His hands began shaking. Then, he slowly shook his head. "No, that's not him." I frowned. "What? That's not Daniel." I looked back at the photo, then at my phone. "They look identical." Dad nodded. "I know, but that's not him. I'd recognize Daniel anywhere. The man you're working for is his younger brother." I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. "Younger brother?" Dad nodded. "Michael Harrison. He stayed out of the business. He wasn't involved. He actually testified against Daniel during the lawsuit. He helped me recover part of the stolen money." I stared at him. "So, I've been suspecting the wrong man." Dad slowly smiled for the first time that day. "Looks like you have." Relief washed over me. For a few seconds, I actually laughed. Not because anything was funny, because the weight I'd been carrying all day had suddenly disappeared. Daniel, or rather, Michael, was innocent. But that relief lasted only a few seconds. Because another question immediately appeared. If Michael isn't behind this, then where is Daniel? Dad's expression became serious again. "I don't know. No one does. The police searched for years. He disappeared without leaving a single trace." That evening, I drove straight back to the office. Michael Harrison was still inside, reviewing contracts. He looked up. "Ethan, you're back." I closed the office door. "We need to talk." He immediately noticed my expression. "What happened?" I placed the old photograph on his desk. He looked at it, then quietly closed his eyes. I wondered when this day would come. "So, you know him?" Michael nodded. "I do. He's my older brother." The room fell silent. "I should have told you years ago. I wanted to, but every time, I was afraid you'd think I was just like him." I remained silent. He continued. "When your father lost everything, I testified against my own brother. My family never forgave me. I changed companies, changed cities, and eventually, I built this business from scratch." I believed him, every word, because unlike Daniel, Michael had spent 15 years helping people, not stealing from them. Then Michael opened his desk drawer, pulled out an old newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Business partner vanishes after multi-million-dollar fraud case." A younger version of Daniel stared back from the front page. The resemblance was unbelievable. Same eyes, same smile, same face, almost identical. Only now, I understood why Ryan had made the mistake. "I haven't seen him," Michael whispered. "In 20 years." He disappeared the night before police arrested him. I looked up. So he's gone. Michael slowly shook his head. I used to think so. He reached into another folder, pulled out a recent photograph, taken only 3 weeks earlier. The picture showed an older man walking into Carter Manufacturing's headquarters through the employee entrance. My blood ran cold, because despite the gray hair, despite the wrinkles, there was no doubt. Daniel Harrison was back. And somehow, after 20 years, he had secretly returned to my father's company. I couldn't stop staring at the photograph. Daniel Harrison, alive, walking into Carter Manufacturing. 3 weeks ago, my mind refused to accept it. I slowly looked up at Michael. Where did this come from? Michael answered immediately. A private investigator. You hired one. He nodded. 5 years ago. Why didn't you tell anyone? He smiled sadly. Because I couldn't prove anything. I only had suspicions. He slid another folder across the desk. I never stopped looking for my brother. I opened it. Hundreds of pages. Bank statements. Property records. Travel documents. Most of them led nowhere. Until the final page. A visitor log. Carter Manufacturing. Visitor name. Daniel Cole. Not Harrison. Cole. The fake name Ryan had mentioned. Everything suddenly connected. Mr. Cole, I whispered. Ryan wasn't lying. Daniel had been using another identity the entire time. Michael stood up. I think your father's company was never the real target. I frowned. What do you mean? He wasn't stealing money anymore. He was stealing something much more valuable. What? Michael looked directly into my eyes. Ownership. That single word hit me harder than anything else. Ownership? I immediately reopened the financial reports. Something I'd ignored before suddenly stood out. Every emergency loan, every debt agreement, every refinancing document contained tiny legal clauses. Clauses that allowed lenders to seize company shares if payments failed. I looked at Michael. Someone wanted Carter Manufacturing to go bankrupt. He nodded. Exactly. And if bankruptcy happened, whoever secretly owned those debts would own the company. I felt sick. This had never been about cash. The thefts, the fake invoices, the financial losses. Everything had been carefully planned for decades. At that exact moment, my phone rang. Dad. I answered immediately. Dad. His voice sounded terrified. Ethan, you need to come now. What happened? The board. They're voting to remove me as CEO. My heart stopped. When? In 1 hour. The call ended. Michael grabbed his car keys. We're going together. Within minutes, we were driving toward Carter Manufacturing. Rain poured across the windshield. Neither of us spoke. Both of us knew, if we were too late, everything would be over. Meanwhile, inside Carter Manufacturing, the boardroom was already full. Directors, lawyers, investors, bank representatives. Dad sat alone at one end of the table, looking exhausted. Across from him, Ryan silently reviewed financial reports. He hadn't noticed the man sitting quietly near the back of the room. Gray hair, dark suit, small glasses. Nobody paid attention to him. To everyone else, he looked like another legal advisor. But Ryan recognized him immediately. His face turned completely white. It was him. Daniel. Older, but unmistakable. Daniel slowly smiled. The exact same smile Ryan had seen 15 years ago. A smile that said, I'm still in control. Ryan's hands started shaking. Outside, Michael slammed the brakes. We're here. Both of us ran toward the entrance. Security immediately stopped us. Board meeting in progress. I showed my company identification. I'm here to see David Carter. I'm sorry. No one enters. Before I could argue, Ryan suddenly burst through the boardroom doors. He was running. Actually running. Ethan, he shouted across the lobby. Ethan, everyone inside the building turned to look. He pointed toward the boardroom. He's here. I frowned. Who? Ryan couldn't even catch his breath. Daniel, he's inside. The entire lobby fell silent. Michael's face lost all color. Without saying another word, he sprinted toward the boardroom. I followed close behind. Ryan was right behind me. As we reached the doors, they slowly opened from the inside. The gray-haired man calmly stepped into the hallway. He looked first at Michael, then at me, then smiled. Well, I was wondering how long it would take before my family found me. Daniel Harrison had finally stopped running. Daniel Harrison smiled. Not the smile of a man who had been caught. The smile of a man who had expected this moment for years. He adjusted his tie, then calmly looked at Michael. You've gotten older. Michael's jaw tightened. I should have made sure you went to prison. Daniel chuckled. You tried. You failed. The hallway fell completely silent. Employees stopped walking. Security guards froze. Nobody understood what was happening. Dad slowly stepped out of the boardroom. The moment he saw Daniel, every bit of color disappeared from his face. You. Daniel nodded politely. Hello, David. I see you're still running the company. Dad clenched his fists. Not for much longer. Daniel smiled. No, not for much longer. The chairman of the board stepped into the hallway. What is going on? Daniel calmly pulled a folder from his briefcase. I believe this belongs to the board. He handed over the documents. The chairman read the first page, then the second. His expression immediately changed. What is this? Daniel answered confidently. Debt ownership certificates. I legally purchased every defaulted loan issued against Carter Manufacturing. The board members began reading, one after another. Nobody spoke. Finally, the chairman looked at Dad. David, according to these agreements, Mr. Harrison now controls 51% of the company's voting shares. The hallway exploded with whispers. Dad looked like he'd been punched. No, that's impossible. Daniel slowly smiled. I've spent 20 years making sure it was possible. Ryan suddenly stepped forward. No, you manipulated those contracts. Daniel looked at him. I offered loans. Your father signed them. I bought the debt. Everything was perfectly legal. Ryan's hands trembled. You destroyed our company. Daniel shrugged. I didn't. Greed did. Pride did. You people simply helped. I stepped forward. You framed my family. Daniel laughed. No, I merely watched all of you destroy each other. He looked directly at Ryan. You framed your brother. You stole the money. You lied. Then he turned toward Dad. You chose one son over the other. Finally, he looked at me. And you walked away instead of fighting. His words echoed through the hallway. For a second, nobody answered, because every sentence contained at least a little truth. Michael quietly walked beside me, then placed another folder on the conference table. I think the board should read these before making any decisions. The chairman opened it. Inside were hundreds of documents, private investigator reports, bank transfers, witness statements, restored security footage, and one final document, a federal financial investigation. Michael spoke calmly. For 20 years, my brother has used fake companies to manipulate debt acquisitions. He doesn't actually own these shares. They were purchased using fraudulent shell corporations. Daniel's smile disappeared. For the first time, he looked worried. The chairman continued reading, then slowly looked up. This investigation started 6 months ago. Michael nodded. Federal agents asked me not to interfere. They wanted him to believe he'd already won. Before Daniel could speak, the main entrance opened. 6 federal agents walked inside. The lead investigator held up a warrant. Daniel Harrison, you are under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, identity fraud, conspiracy, and corporate financial crimes. The hallway became completely silent. Daniel looked around, searching for a way out. There wasn't one. As the agents placed handcuffs on him, he looked directly at me. You think this changes anything? I calmly answered. It changes everything. An hour later, the board meeting resumed. Without Daniel, without the lies, without the manipulation, the chairman stood. After reviewing the evidence, all fraudulent debt agreements are suspended. The company returns to its original ownership. Dad slowly sat down, completely exhausted. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't smiling. He simply looked broken. Later that evening, the 4 of us sat inside Dad's office. Me, Dad, Mom, Ryan. Nobody spoke for several minutes. Finally, Dad stood, walked around the desk, and stopped in front of me. He looked older than I remembered, not because of age, because of regret. His voice shook. Ethan, I stole 15 years from you. I believed the wrong son. I failed to protect you. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even deserve it. He slowly reached into a drawer, pulled out a faded newspaper clipping. It was the article from the day I was accused. He tore it into tiny pieces, then quietly whispered, my son was never a thief. Mom began crying. Ryan couldn't even lift his head. I looked around the office. The same office where my life had fallen apart. The same room where I'd lost everything. Then I smiled. Not because the pain had disappeared, because it finally had an ending. I looked at Dad. I forgave you a long time ago. I just couldn't come home until the truth did. Dad hugged me for the first time since I was 17. This time, neither of us let go too quickly. 6 months later, Carter Manufacturing reopened under new leadership. Dad retired. Ryan accepted responsibility for his crimes and cooperated fully with investigators. Instead of prison, he received a reduced sentence that included restitution and community service because of his full cooperation in exposing Daniel's fraud network. As for me, I never became CEO. I didn't want the company. I had already built my own dream. But every month, I still visited the factory, not as an owner, not as a consultant, as a son. Sometimes, life doesn't give you justice when you need it. Sometimes it takes years, sometimes decades. But the truth has one incredible habit. No matter how deeply it's buried, it always finds its way back into the light. And when it finally does, it doesn't just clear your name. It sets your heart free.